This is Nair.
And this is Farce.
And we are Perspeculative.
And today we're bringing you our latest segment, Hate to Great, where we talk about characters who we think are going to be terrible at the start and kind of grow on you as the story progresses.
A face turn, if you will, as Farce let me know.
Well, yeah, and a face turn's usually more for villains to heroes, but in this case, a person can go from just being a jerk or an a-hole to a hero in your eyes, specifically. And that's what we're talking about this week. So, to start us off, I believe you want to talk about an icon who is apparently, you want to make our fans hate us right out of the gate, so it's going to be hilarious.
Yeah, so, guys, listen, okay, I got into the whole Jojo thing, okay, everybody likes to recommend, and I did not at all like one of the very popular Jojos, which was Jotaro, at all. At all. He was a grade A-hole. Like, the grade A, the A is for a-hole, okay? And I didn't get why anyone liked him. Yes, he's strong. Yes, he's serious. Yes, he's good looking. And apparently there's that whole style thing going on in fashion. But he is just an absolute jerk to his mother, to strangers, to schoolmates, to his family. He is just so mean for no reason. We're not given like this is a sad backstory where he had this to deal with and this is why he's a jerk and this is his defense mechanism and the walls he puts up to protect himself because actually he's really soft and delicate. No, he's just a good looking jerk.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and that's kind of a thing. I could empathize with him until he started calling his mother a bitch, and I'm like, I can't really, like...
And she's nothing but nice all the time. Maybe a little too nice. I mean, obviously, she needs to put that boy in, you know what I mean, check. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and, I mean, it may not be obvious from my roaring New York accent I have, but I'm actually from the South, and down where I come from, we don't call our mother bitches, you know? That's a quick way to catch a meat hook to the face.
Meat hook. Everybody in the South just has meat hooks, apparently.
Oh,
meat hooks for hands.
Yeah, if you're from the North, quick learning experience for you. We all carry large meat hooks with us everywhere we go, all the time. But,
oh my god.
No, and... Yeah, and that is one I absolutely wholeheartedly agreed with, just because he's so mean to everyone. Like, not even just... So, like, the original writer took inspiration for his personality from Clint Eastwood and a lot of the old cowboy movies, where he's this grizzled, sort of badass, sort of like, cantankerous jerk, but who does the right thing ultimately, And I could see from a perspective where that's coming from. And I could see from, like, the whole Japanese culture, having someone who's very counterculture be popular, Because in Japan, it's a very polite culture, you're supposed to be very polite and friendly and welcoming, and he is...
Not.
Yeah.
In any shape, form, way.
I mean, like, greets his grandfather for the first time in years, but who the hell is this old man? Something to that effect.
He's just such a turd. The first thing that made me question how I felt about him was when he saved that girl from drowning and the sea monsters. What was it?
It was the sharks. It was the
sharks. It was sharks. Okay, I was gonna say sharks, but then I'm like, was it sharks? It's Jojo. You never know. No. But he saved her. And I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? He did something nice. He didn't act like a dick about it afterward. Okay. And then, of course, as you get to the next parts of Jojo, he does get much better, and he really does grow on you. But at first, there's no question. He is just a turd for no reason.
A turd?
Well, we've already said jerk and dick and asshole, so what's next? Turd. I mean, yeah, he put himself in jail to try to protect people, but that, like Farce said, he does the right thing ultimately, but he is still a turd, jerk, dick, asshole, face. Anyway.
But yeah, no. And it probably wouldn't be so pronounced if it felt like he developed more throughout the adventure, but he's pretty much as stoic and also assholish as he is from the beginning to the very end. We do see moments of, like, him lightening up a little bit, but they're very few and far between. He pretty much stays very solid, to the point where people often joke with that whole part that Polnareff's the real protagonist because he goes through the most character development and growth throughout that whole arc. Like, we see him go from, sort of a revenge-thirsty jerk to someone who really understands the gravity of what they're actually trying to do. This isn't a simple revenge quest for him. This is like a fate of the world type thing, and he has to kind of deal with it rather than simply being in it just to pursue his sister's killer. But meanwhile, Jotaro pretty much stays not stagnant, but pretty consistent through to the end. And maybe that's because they were waiting for the very end for him to have a moment of character growth that represented his Stan's power coming out. But I mean, that's up for debate.
And I'd say the comparison is made harsh by our first JoJo, which is Jonathan, who actually at the time was my favorite JoJo, and is very friendly and good through and through. Just a gentleman, literally. And then you have Jotaro, where it's like, dude looks like him, but are they really related? Cause damn.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're definitely very, there's a large disparity between, and this could be because the writer was trying to effectively represent different styles of heroes across different eras. Jonathan's very much a classical hero. He's very much the, upper class, white, well-to-do. Not that race has much of anything to do with JoJo, since the entire family is so multi-ethnic that, that calling one of them white, whatever, isn't really relevant. But I say that because across the arc of the series, he kind of tries to represent different kinds of heroes from one era to another, and he represents that classical, sort of old-school adventure novel style hero, the guy who goes to slay Dracula, the whole 9 yards. And then you have his grandson, Joseph, who's very much like sort of the brash, slightly jerkish, American-style hero, the more like action comic-style hero who's very much...
He ain't my hero. I'm just kidding.
We'll save that for another episode, my hero. Trust me, that episode's coming. But no, and then you have Jotaro, who's sort of the counterculture, punk, asshole hero archetype. Very much. Not that excuses... I mean, that doesn't make me like him knowing what he's supposed to represent. It just tells me why he's like the way he is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then, as we said, he does get much better in the following whole parts. Like, you have to go parts, seasons, before he will change, as Far said. But he does become a really likable character. He always was intelligent, which is, a good characteristic to have, first of all. And he, of course, was always good looking, but, big surprise, that's most everybody. Most everybody's built, most everybody's good looking. Either that or they're really, really not. Yeah. Like, really not.
Like either beautiful or nearly a monster.
Right? Like, oh, what's wrong with that guy? I don't know that kind of deformity. Gotta look that up later.
That kid in part 4 who looks like an overweight Bart
Exactly
Simpson.
What I was thinking.
Spikes and all. Spikes on his head and all.
At least he loved his mom and dad.
Yeah.
He was another little bitch-ass kid. Like, just a little jerk. But, at the end, at least he really loved his parents.
But
anyway.
That segues nicely into where Jotaro became more of a likable character, as where before he was kind of a complete dick. He seems to have mellowed a lot after college, apparently. I don't know exactly what happened to him between parts 3 and part 4, but he definitely
grew up.
Yeah,
he grew up.
Well, yeah, he grew up, but he's just less of an ass. Like, he's still very, very stoic, very like, quiet, and very much like doesn't flinch from getting hurt or taking pain, but he's very much also he's easier to talk to for other characters. He's not so openly defiant anymore. He's very calm and reserved, almost to a fault. Which he becomes sort of a very, very good mentor character for Josuke, the main character of part 4, while he kind of falls into the background as almost a detective type character who's sort of unraveling what's actually going on in the town while the main characters are just going about their happy day-to-day lives, And I appreciate that because you appreciate him more because of how much of an asshole he was in the previous part.
If you say so.
Well...
I like him either way.
Your mileage may vary. It feels almost like two completely different characters. I mean, they look like
Very
two
much
completely
so.
different characters.
Very much so.
Considering in high school he was built like a linebacker, and then
He's still
after
built.
college he's like he's still jacked, but he's like not 7 foot of raw muscle jacked. He's more like normal human jacked. Like I go to the
So
gym
what you're
regularly
saying
jacked.
is he got off the roids.
Yeah, exactly. He's calmer. He's less of a jerk. He's less muscular. Like, yeah, he just got off the steroids. That was it. But yeah, it works, and I feel like he fits that sort of like mentor type character much better in terms of like he comes across as less of an ass, but he's also feels like the kind of character the other characters would want to rely on.
Mm-hmm. And he is very reliable, so they're not wrong.
Yeah.
And what you told me about the whole tarot card thing really made me feel better about him, despite how much I disliked him at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. I was telling Nair, I have this sort of, I don't know if it's a theory, but more of like just how the story progresses, that all the characters with name stands throughout the arc are reflected in the tarot, very much so, to greater and lesser extents. And there, you can make a whole separate video on exactly the nature of the tarot and how they reflect each character in the part, but it's not exactly a secret. Like, all the characters' stands are named after tarot cards until they get to Egypt, and there's a whole switch in the convention, but that's a whole separate thing. But Jotaro's stand card is the star, which reflects it can reflect a number of things, but it's generally used to reflect taking time to rest, reflect, and moments of quiet in order to collect oneself. But it's also been used to compare to someone who is waiting for their moment to shine. Someone who is withdrawn and holding within themselves until their moment to show what they're made of. And that very much reflects Jotaro to a T, where he's very ornery and cantankerous, and like he's a jerk, calling people bitch and asshole, pretty much unprovoked. And he just comes across as the kind of guy who you'd never see as a hero until his moment comes, and then suddenly he just saves a little girl from being attacked by a shark. So he just dives into the ocean to rescue a little girl who was about to be eaten by a shark, or, rescues one of his friends from an almost guaranteed near-death experience, or
Goes halfway around the world to punch someone in the face because they hurt his mama.
Yeah, pretty much, exactly. like he's very reserved, very withheld, and when he's not, he's an ass. But then there are those moments where he just pretty much has his time to shine, and I feel like that's reflected very strongly in his both versions of the tarot reflect very strongly in his personality.
And didn't you say the reverse was kind of that, or is that the withdrawn part?
There's an argument. Yeah, I have this whole separate theory about the how some of the characters, particularly the villains, are reflected in being tarot cards as they are straight, and then there's reverse, where a tarot card, when it's represented, is meant to represent the opposite or the negative aspects of the thing it's supposed to represent. In Jotaro's case, being the star the star is reflected in someone who is either waiting for their moment or taking a moment of reprieve and quiet and rest to gather their strength and gather their inner power. But the reverse of that is actually someone who is running themselves absolutely ragged and taking no time to rest, no time to withdraw, just go. And there's an argument that could be reflected in his personality in part 6. Spoilers, slight spoilers, I guess. But he's very much got that personality of someone who was going so consistently he forgot to stop and explain himself. And that kind of left a bad taste in a lot of his family's mouth, particularly some of the main characters, about why he acts the way he acts, why he made some of the choices he made without actually explaining any of that to them. But I'm not going to go so far as part 6. We're just talking about part 3 and 4, Jotaro, right now. But yeah, I feel like he sort of, maybe with age, has kind of started to become more of the reverse of himself, simply because he's lost the part of himself that sort of stopped and waited and explained, because he understood the gravity of what he was doing, the gravity of what he was trying to do. And so he sort of lost focus on what he didn't stop and take the time to listen to himself and maybe make the right decision in certain circumstances, which kind of comes back to bite him later on. But I've been rambling here for like 5 minutes, so I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good. So let's just wrap this up. That saying Jotaro is definitely a character that starts out with very little reason to like, lots of reasons to dislike actively, and you don't really imagine yourself rooting for him, liking him, but he does change. He brings it around, and you end up being in his corner and really liking him. So, yeah, face turn, hate to great.
Yeah, no, I agree. He definitely sort of became, and this could just be the writer getting better as they went, but he becomes more of a fully fleshed out character across the arc of the series. Mm-hmm. Weirdly, not in his own story, but hey, whatever,
Not in his own part, but he's so good. Apparently, he has to cross multiple parts, unlike any other. Well, not any other JoJo, but most of the JoJos.
Yeah, no, and I'd absolutely agree to that.
Although I guess Joseph does cross three.
Three. Because he's the main character part 2, a secondary character in part 3, and then he's
a tertiary character.
Yeah, I would say a tertiary. Weirdly enough, he is kind of a tertiary character in part 4.
I got the baby. I'm sorry. Oh, jeez. He's a brownie in a different life. I stole the baby. Anyway. Not that that's how they sounded at all, but
Yeah.
Those who know what I'm talking about, you get me. You feel me.
All right. Well, on that note,